Silence fell over Jerusalem at exactly 3:17 a.m. on July 14th. Not the normal quiet of early morning, but an absolute stillness that felt deliberate, almost alive. Birds stopped singing, wind ceased, electronic devices flickered and died. And then it happened. The sky above the Mount of Olives, the very place where Scripture says Jesus will return, began to shimmer. At first, witnesses thought it might be heat lightning or perhaps military flares. But what came next defied all natural explanation. The darkness parted like a curtain being torn in two. A vertical fracture of brilliant white-blue light split the night sky, extending from horizon to zenith. 17 seconds of this phenomenon was all it took to wake hundreds of residents. They poured into streets, onto balconies, their faces illuminated by an otherworldly glow as they raised phones to capture what no human eye was meant to witness. The footage I've obtained, which government agencies worldwide are actively scrubbing from servers, shows what happened next. They emerged through the rift. Not one or two, but 49 beings arranged in perfect geometric precision. 7 rows of 7, each standing taller than 3 men. Their forms weren't vaporous or cloudy as skeptics claim. They possessed definition, structure, substance, yet moved with impossible fluidity, hovering without wings in defiance of physics. "I've never believed in anything spiritual," whispered David Catan, a 43-year-old shopkeeper who watched from his rooftop apartment half a mile away. "But what I saw wasn't technology. It wasn't atmospheric. It was..." His voice breaks here in our recorded interview. "It was holy, terrifying in its perfection. I haven't stopped shaking since." Catan wasn't alone. Sarah Mizrahi, a retired physics professor, observed the entire 17-minute event through a telescope. Her scientific observations are clinical, precise, and utterly inexplicable within our understanding of natural law. "The beings emitted light without heat," she noted in her journal, which she shared exclusively with this channel. "They arranged themselves in formations that shifted with mathematical precision, and most disturbing, they seemed aware they were being watched." The Jerusalem event might have been dismissed as mass hysteria, if not for one undeniable fact. It was captured on 43 separate recording devices from multiple angles. 3 independent video analysis laboratories have examined the footage. All confirm: no digital manipulation, no drone technology, no atmospheric anomaly. What you're seeing is real. Within hours, Israeli authorities established a no-fly zone over the entire area. Media blackout followed swiftly. Official explanations ranged from unusual weather phenomena to scheduled military exercises. But those who witnessed it know the truth. Those who've seen the unedited footage know what really happened. This wasn't an isolated incident. 3 days earlier, a smaller formation of these beings was documented over the Sea of Galilee. 7 days before that, unusual light configurations were reported above Bethlehem. The pattern is accelerating, intensifying, precisely as ancient texts predicted it would. I've spent every waking moment since July 14th gathering testimony, securing footage before it disappears, consulting with religious scholars and scientific experts who are all reaching the same stunning conclusion. These manifestations align perfectly with prophetic descriptions from multiple faith traditions about the time immediately preceding the return of Christ. The authorities don't want this information public. 3 of my sources have gone silent in the past 48 hours. My own accounts have been flagged, restricted, shadow banned. I'm taking extraordinary measures to ensure this broadcast reaches you, knowing it may be my last. You need to understand what's happening, because every indication suggests these manifestations are spreading. Reports are now coming in from Damascus, Cairo, Rome, following a pattern that religious scholars recognize from ancient texts. This isn't happening by chance. It isn't random. The timing, the precision, the specific locations, they all point to something monumental unfolding according to a divine timetable established millennia ago. Where are you right now as you're watching this? Your location may be more significant than you realize. The pattern of appearances suggests these manifestations are moving outward from Jerusalem in concentric circles of decreasing intensity. Mathematical projections indicate when they might reach your region. The first eyewitness account came from Eli Barak, a security guard at an apartment complex near the Mount of Olives. Eli wasn't supposed to be on the roof at 3:15 a.m. His patrol route specifically excluded the rooftop after midnight. But that night, something pulled him upward, an inexplicable urge he still can't explain. "I felt cold suddenly," Eli told me, his eyes still wide 2 days after the event. "Not the normal night chill, but a deep cold that reached my bones. My radio crackled with static, then died completely. The air pressure changed, like being deep underwater. That's when I knew something was wrong." Eli wasn't the only one who felt it. Across Jerusalem's old city, hundreds reported the same sequence. A temperature drop of exactly 15 degrees Celsius within seconds, electronic malfunctions, and then the profound silence. A vacuum of sound so complete that many described it as painful. Ruth Cohen, a neuroscientist visiting from London, measured the phenomenon with equipment from her hotel room. "The readings make no sense," she explained, showing me her data. "It wasn't just that sound stopped. It was as if the very medium through which sound travels was temporarily altered, physically impossible, yet I measured it happening. At precisely 3:17 a.m., the tear appeared. Witnesses describe it identically. A vertical line of blue-white light extending from the horizon directly above the Mount of Olives, reaching upward until it disappeared into the night sky. The tear widened over exactly 90 seconds, revealing what many described as a different kind of light behind our reality. Father Thomas Riley, an American priest studying ancient texts at a monastery nearby, witnessed the entire event. His theological training did not prepare him for what emerged from that light. "They were arranged with divine precision," he whispered during our interview, his hands trembling as he sketched the formation. 7 rows of 7, the sacred number repeated. Their symmetry was perfect. Too perfect for any natural formation, and they moved as one body despite maintaining individual forms. The beings themselves defied easy description. Standing approximately 20 feet tall, they possessed humanoid shapes, but with proportions that witnesses found disturbing yet beautiful. Their surface, not skin, not clothing, but something else entirely, rippled with what Father Riley called living light. Most disturbing was their awareness. Multiple witnesses reported the same detail. The beings seemed to be observing, cataloging, measuring. Their attention moved in coordinated patterns across the city, lingering on specific structures: the Dome of the Rock, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Western Wall, and 7 other locations of ancient significance. David Catan, the shopkeeper I mentioned earlier, described the physical effect of being observed by these entities. "When their attention passed over me, I felt known. Not just seen, known completely, every thought, every secret, every sin. I fell to my knees without meaning to. My body recognized something my mind couldn't comprehend." The Jerusalem Post journalist Sarah Levy arrived 30 minutes into the event. Her smartphone wouldn't function, but her older film camera captured 5 frames before failing. Those images, which she shared exclusively with Light Found, show something remarkable. The beings' positions shifted between frames, but always maintained perfect geometric relationships to each other. A mathematician from Hebrew University later confirmed the beings were arranging themselves according to sacred geometry patterns found in ancient Solomon's temple designs. At 3:34 a.m., a sound began, not from the beings themselves, but seemingly from everywhere at once. Witnesses described it as a single note that contained all music. Audio recordings, though distorted, captured frequencies that audio engineers at Tel Aviv University called harmonically impossible, containing tones that cannot naturally coexist. Israeli authorities responded with remarkable speed. By 4 a.m., military helicopters circled the area but kept a distance of at least 1 kilometer from the manifestation. By 4:30 a.m., all roads to the Mount of Olives were blocked. By dawn, the official explanation had already been crafted. A previously scheduled military holographic exercise combined with unusual atmospheric conditions. But the soldiers themselves tell a different story. One member of the Israeli Defense Forces, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed, "We were ordered not to approach within 500 meters. When asked why, our commander said, 'Because they're not here for us.'" Those were his exact words. The manifestation lasted exactly 17 minutes. At 3:51 a.m., the beings assumed a final formation, a perfect cross of light, before ascending into the tear in reality, which sealed itself from top to bottom. The temperature normalized, electronic devices reactivated, the silence lifted. But Jerusalem was forever changed. Those who witnessed it directly report the same after effects. Persistent trembling, heightened sensory perception, and a deep certainty that they had glimpsed something beyond our dimension, something that would return. Most significantly, none of this happened in isolation. The patterns aligning with ancient prophecy had already begun days earlier, with smaller manifestations leading to this moment. And what followed in other locations confirmed what many now suspect. We are witnessing the first phase of something written in texts thousands of years old. Rabbi Aaron Levine hadn't slept in 3 days. His desk in the back room of Jerusalem's oldest theological library was buried under ancient scrolls, modern translations, and hundreds of notes scrawled in his increasingly frantic handwriting. When I found him, his eyes were bloodshot, his beard untrimmed, but his voice carried absolute conviction. "This wasn't random," he whispered, glancing around, though we were alone. "The timing, the location, the configuration, it all aligns with texts we've studied for generations, but never fully understood until now." Rabbi Levine wasn't alone in his recognition. Across Jerusalem, religious scholars from diverse traditions were reaching identical conclusions through different sacred texts. Their findings, shared through encrypted channels to avoid authorities, painted a picture too precise to dismiss as coincidence. The prophet Ezekiel described it with astonishing accuracy. Father Dimitri Papadopoulos, an Orthodox scholar, explained as he opened his well-worn Bible to Ezekiel 1:14. The living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. The Hebrew word used here, bazak, doesn't just mean lightning. It specifically describes a tear or rent in reality through which light emerges. But the descriptions matched witness accounts with unnerving precision. Not just the appearance of the beings, but their formation, movement patterns, and even the specific sounds reported. But more compelling than the descriptions was the timing. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a mathematician who specialized in biblical chronology, before witnessing the Jerusalem event herself, pulled up a calendar on her tablet. "We are exactly 1,290 days from when the Euphrates River reached unprecedented low levels in 2022, she explained, her finger tracing across dates. For the first time in recorded history, people could walk across parts of it on foot. She turned to Daniel 12:11. "And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days." Her voice trembled. The Euphrates drying up is explicitly mentioned in Revelation as a sign before the final battle. And now, exactly 1,290 days later, we have beings arranging themselves in the 7x7 formation described in ancient texts about the armies of heaven. The connections weren't limited to Christian and Jewish traditions. Dr. Ibrahim Al-Farsi, an Islamic scholar who witnessed the manifestation from his home near the Mount of Olives, pointed out passages in the Quran that described similar phenomena preceding the Day of Judgment. "In our tradition, we speak of the angels arranging themselves in ranks," he explained. "The Quran says they will descend in specific formations before the final day. What's remarkable is that all three Abrahamic faiths describe the same sequence of events, just through different cultural lenses. Most striking was the connection to the exact date. July 19th, 2025, today, marks precisely 100 years since the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1925. These ancient documents, hidden for millennia, contained previously unknown apocalyptic texts that described the time when the veil between worlds thins and sentinels of light appear in formation above the holy mountain. Sister Maria Gonzalez, a Catholic nun with decades of study in ancient languages, had been translating a previously overlooked fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls when the Jerusalem incident occurred. The timing is, well, I have no rational explanation, she admitted, showing me her translation notes. This fragment specifically mentions 7 times 7 watchers who would appear when 1 century has passed from their revealing. The scrolls were revealed to the modern world in 1925, and here we are, 1 century later. Even more unsettling were the astronomical alignments. Dr. Jason Park, an astrophysicist who'd been mapping celestial movements against biblical chronology, showed me star charts that left me speechless. On July 14th, the exact moment the beings appeared, the stars aligned in a configuration that happens only once every 2,000 years, he explained. The 3 stars mentioned in Job, what we call Orion's belt, aligned perfectly with Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth, forming a perfect cross in the sky. He pulled up historical data. The last time this exact alignment occurred was the estimated time of Christ's birth. This isn't subjective interpretation. These are mathematical certainties. Perhaps most chilling was what these scholars unanimously predicted would happen next. Based on their calculations, the manifestations would continue in a specific pattern, increasing in frequency and intensity, culminating in something they all described in similar terms despite their different faith traditions. We're seeing the fulfillment of prophecies written thousands of years ago, Rabbi Levine concluded, his finger tracing a timeline that ended just weeks from now. What happened in Jerusalem isn't the end of the sequence. It's the beginning. The scholars' predictions were already proving accurate. The pattern of appearances following the Jerusalem event, over the Sea of Galilee, Bethlehem, and now other sacred sites worldwide, matched exactly what their ancient texts described as the prelude to something far greater, something that, according to every calculation, was approaching with mathematical precision. The unmarked door in East Jerusalem led to a basement laboratory where Dr. Sophia Reeves hunched over equipment worth millions. As a senior seismologist with 3 decades of experience, she'd never expected to be working in secret, hidden from her own colleagues. They told me to classify this data, she whispered, glancing nervously at her phone. Said it was sensitive to national security. In 30 years, I've never been asked to hide scientific readings. On her monitor, a series of jagged lines told a story the public wasn't supposed to know. Since the Jerusalem incident, her instruments had detected 7 distinct micro-earthquakes centered precisely beneath the Temple Mount, each too small to feel without equipment, but forming a pattern that defied geological explanation. Look at the spacing, Dr. Reeves pointed, her finger tracing the timeline. Exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes between each event. Nature doesn't work with that precision. And the epicenters, she pulled up a 3D rendering of the Temple Mount. They're forming a perfect circle beneath the foundation stones. It's as if something is preparing the ground. Her discovery aligned perfectly with Zechariah 14:4. Which prophesied that the Mount of Olives would physically split before Christ's return. The microfractures were following the exact path described in the ancient text. Dr. Reeves wasn't the only scientist risking her career to reveal suppressed evidence. Across the city, in a cluttered apartment, Dr. Marcus Chen, an astronomer from the Jerusalem Observatory, showed me solar data that had been removed from official records mere hours after being recorded. These were captured by 3 separate observatories, he explained. pulling up images that made me catch my breath. The sun's corona, its outer atmosphere visible during solar activity, had formed distinct cross-shaped patterns during flares that occurred simultaneously with the Jerusalem manifestation. NASA ordered these scrubbed from public servers yesterday, Dr. Chen said, his voice tight. The official explanation was calibration errors. But I've been studying solar phenomena for 20 years. These aren't errors. He pointed to similar patterns captured during solar events in 1917 during the Fatima miracles in Portugal, and again in 1981 during reported Marian apparitions in Medjugorje. The sun doesn't form these patterns naturally. It's mathematically impossible. Even more compelling was the audio evidence. Professor Elijah Blackwood, an acoustic engineer who specialized in infrasound, frequencies below human hearing, had been operating recording equipment across Jerusalem as part of an urban noise pollution study when his instruments captured something extraordinary. These tones shouldn't exist in nature, he explained, playing a modified recording that raised goosebumps on my arms. Deep resonant sounds like enormous brass instruments, but with harmonic structures that violated known physics. I've analyzed these with every tool available, Professor Blackwood continued, showing me spectrograms and wave analyses. The harmonic overtones contain mathematical relationships that don't occur naturally. They contain prime number sequences embedded within the frequency relationships. His colleagues had detected identical acoustic signatures in Rome, Cairo, and most inexplicably, Detroit, always preceding visual manifestations by exactly 317 seconds. Most disturbing, Professor Blackwood added, lowering his voice, is that these frequencies operate directly on human consciousness. They bypass the auditory cortex and stimulate the pineal gland. That's why witnesses report feeling spiritually awakened even before seeing anything. The evidence extended beyond scientific instruments. Security footage from around Jerusalem had captured phenomena invisible to the naked eye. Mika Goldstein, a cybersecurity expert who accessed surveillance archives before they were restricted, showed me infrared camera feeds from the Western Wall Plaza. Watch the heat signatures, he instructed, playing footage from 3:15 a.m. on July 14th. The thermal imaging showed dramatic temperature fluctuations, moving in coordinated patterns across the plaza, forming symbols recognized in ancient Kabbalistic texts as representing divine presence. The authorities confiscated every camera in this network by noon, Goldstein explained. Official reason: routine maintenance. In the middle of a security crisis? I don't think so. Perhaps most compelling was the medical evidence. Dr. Hannah Leibowitz, a neurologist at Hadassah Medical Center, had been monitoring patients with implanted brain activity sensors when the Jerusalem incident occurred. All 7 patients showed identical brainwave patterns at exactly 3:17 a.m., she revealed, displaying EEG readings. Even though they were in different rooms, different floors, their neural activity synchronized perfectly, showing massive activation in the temporal lobe regions associated with religious experience. The patients later reported identical visions, despite having no contact with each other and no knowledge of the events outside. Each described the same beings, the same formations, using nearly identical language, despite diverse religious backgrounds. This isn't mass hysteria, Dr. Leibowitz concluded. This is something affecting human consciousness at a fundamental level, something we don't have the scientific framework to explain. As I compiled this evidence, patterns emerged that couldn't be dismissed. The authorities weren't just hiding individual anomalies, they were concealing a coordinated phenomenon unfolding exactly as ancient texts had predicted it would. The secure video connection flickered as Father Miguel Suarez adjusted his camera. Behind him, the Mexico City skyline glowed in pre-dawn darkness. His hands trembled not from age, but from what he'd witnessed just hours earlier. It appeared at precisely 4:17 a.m. our time. he said, voice barely above a whisper. A single figure, taller than any building, standing over the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. People were already gathered for early morning prayers when the air changed. Father Suarez was one of hundreds who witnessed the phenomenon that had become the third confirmed manifestation since Jerusalem. His detailed account matched reports flooding in from around the world, all following a mathematically precise pattern expanding outward from the holy city. The people didn't panic, he continued, eyes distant with memory. That's what struck me most. 5,000 people fell silent simultaneously, then knelt without instruction. Even non-believers, something in the presence compelled reverence. Dr. Amara Okafor, a mathematician at Oxford University, had been tracking these manifestations since the Jerusalem event. Her office walls were covered with maps, each appearance marked with red pins connected by strings that formed concentric circles. It's expanding outward at a constant rate, she explained, tracing the pattern with her finger. Jerusalem on the 14th, the Vatican on the 16th, Mexico City on the 17th, Damascus yesterday the 18th, and based on this progression, we can predict exactly where and when the next appearances will occur. Her calculations revealed a chilling precision. Each manifestation occurred at exactly the same minute in local time, always 3:17 a.m. The locations weren't random either. Each site held profound religious significance across multiple faith traditions. The pattern forms what mathematicians call a golden spiral, Dr. Okafor continued, overlaying a transparent sheet on her map. It's a pattern found throughout nature, in galaxies, seashells, flower petals, but this spiral centers perfectly on Jerusalem and expands outward in exact proportion to the golden ratio, a mathematical constant often called God's fingerprint in creation. More disturbing were the ancient connections. Rabbi David Abramson had discovered that the pattern of appearances precisely matched a sequence described in the Dead Sea Scrolls, specifically in the previously untranslated Scroll of the Watchers. This text describes sentinels of light appearing in succession along the sacred spiral, Rabbi Abramson explained, carefully unrolling a photocopy of the ancient document. It provides a mathematical formula for calculating their progression, a formula that exactly matches what we're witnessing now. The scroll contained another prediction, one that sent shivers through religious communities worldwide. When the sentinels have marked the sacred points along the spiral, they shall gather as one host at the place of beginning. If the pattern continued, manifestations would occur over every major population center within 21 days, culminating in a final massive convergence over Jerusalem on August 9th, exactly 1 month from today. The global response had been unprecedented. For the first time in history, the Vatican, Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo, and the Chief Rabbinate of Israel issued a joint statement acknowledging that the phenomena transcended individual religious traditions and calling for a global day of prayer on July 25th. Political leaders struggled to maintain order while offering increasingly implausible explanations. The United Nations Security Council had convened an emergency session behind closed doors, but details leaked to the press revealed profound disagreement about how to address what was happening. Meanwhile, ordinary people were responding in ways that defied expectation. Instead of panic, many reported a strange, pervasive calm. Church attendance had surged 700% worldwide. Mosques remained open 24 hours to accommodate crowds. Synagogues overflowed with seekers. It's not fear driving people to sacred spaces, explained Dr. Sarah Michaels, a sociologist studying the phenomenon. My research indicates something more profound, a collective awakening, as if humanity is being prepared for something beyond our current understanding. Perhaps most telling were the personal transformations. Reports flooded in from every continent of spontaneous reconciliations between estranged family members, sudden acts of extraordinary generosity, and people abandoning long-standing conflicts. The beings themselves aren't causing this, Dr. Michaels noted. Their presence is simply revealing something that was always there, our capacity for transcendence, for seeing beyond our limited perspectives. And as I compiled these reports, working through the night to bring you this broadcast, a pattern emerged that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence or hysteria. Something profound was unfolding on a global scale, something that aligned with prophetic texts from diverse traditions, yet transcended any single religious framework. The manifestations were approaching a culmination point. The mathematical progression was unmistakable. If the pattern continued, we were weeks, perhaps days, away from an event beyond anything in recorded human history. The question was no longer whether these were isolated incidents or mass delusion. The evidence had become too consistent, too widespread, too precisely aligned with ancient predictions. The only questions remaining were what would happen when the cycle completed, and whether humanity was prepared for what would follow. Whatever comes next, one thing is certain. We are witnesses to something our ancestors described in reverent whispers, something they believed would come at the turning point of history. And all evidence suggests that moment has arrived. What we've uncovered together today transcends ordinary reporting. This isn't just another news story. It's potentially the most significant moment in human history unfolding before our eyes. Let me take a moment to connect the threads of what we've witnessed and what it means for each of us watching right now. On July 14th at precisely 3:17 a.m., the skies above Jerusalem opened, not metaphorically, but literally. A vertical tear in reality, witnessed by hundreds and documented on dozens of devices. Through this rift emerged 49 beings, arranged in 7 rows of 7, hovering in perfect formation above the Mount of Olives, the exact location where biblical prophecy states Christ will return. These weren't vague, indistinct apparitions. They manifested with terrifying clarity, beings of light standing over 20 feet tall, radiating what witnesses described as holy terror and beautiful dread. Their appearance triggered simultaneous physical and spiritual responses in all who saw them: uncontrollable trembling, overwhelming reverence, and a profound sense of being known completely. The authorities responded with remarkable speed, establishing a no-fly zone, blocking roads, and crafting an official narrative about military exercises and atmospheric anomalies. But the soldiers themselves tell a different story, ordered to maintain distance because, in their commander's words, "They are not here for us." This wasn't an isolated incident. The Jerusalem manifestation was preceded by smaller appearances over Galilee and Bethlehem, and followed by precisely timed manifestations over the Vatican, Mexico City, and Damascus, each occurring at exactly 3:17 a.m. local time, each following a mathematically perfect expanding spiral centered on Jerusalem. The timing aligns with biblical prophecies with stunning precision. We stand exactly 1,290 days from when the Euphrates River reached unprecedented low levels in 2022, allowing people to walk across parts of it on foot for the first time in recorded history, exactly as described in Daniel 12:11 and Revelation 16. Today marks precisely 100 years since the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which contained previously unknown texts describing sentinels of light appearing in formation when 1 century has passed from their revealing. The evidence extends far beyond witness testimony. Seismological data shows 7 micro-earthquakes occurring beneath the Temple Mount at intervals of exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes, forming a perfect circle that follows the exact path described in Zechariah 14:4, which prophesied that the mount would physically split before Christ's return. Solar observatories captured impossible cross-shaped patterns in the sun's corona during the manifestations, data that was quickly scrubbed from public servers but preserved by courageous scientists. Acoustic engineers recorded trumpet-like sounds with harmonic structures that violate known physics, containing embedded prime number sequences that appear to operate directly on human consciousness. These phenomena are expanding outward from Jerusalem at a constant rate, forming what mathematicians call a golden spiral, a pattern often referred to as God's fingerprint in creation. According to ancient texts and modern calculations, if this progression continues, manifestations will occur over every major population center within 21 days, culminating in a final convergence over Jerusalem on August 9th. The global response has been unprecedented. For the first time in history, leaders from Christianity, Islam, and Judaism have issued joint statements acknowledging that these events transcend individual religious traditions. Church attendance has surged 700% worldwide. Mosques remain open 24 hours. Synagogues overflow with seekers. Most remarkably, instead of panic, humanity appears to be experiencing a collective awakening. Spontaneous reconciliations between estranged family members, extraordinary acts of generosity, and the abandonment of long-standing conflicts. Something profound is unfolding on a global scale, something that aligns with prophetic texts yet transcends any single religious framework. I've risked everything to bring you this truth. 3 of my sources have gone silent. My accounts have been restricted, flagged, shadow banned. I've worked without sleep, facing active suppression, because I believe you deserve to know what's happening, because I believe this information may be crucial for what comes next. This investigation has cost everything, financially, professionally, personally. The equipment needed to secure these interviews, the secure servers to store this evidence, the protective measures to ensure this broadcast reaches you. None of it comes without significant cost. Light Found exists for one purpose: to illuminate truth in darkness, to bring light to what others seek to hide. Right now, we're witnessing what may be the fulfillment of humanity's oldest prophecies, the potential return of Christ as foretold in sacred texts across traditions. If ever there was a moment when unflinching truth was needed, it's now. I need to know you're receiving this message. I need to know this information is reaching those who seek understanding in these extraordinary times. The comment section below isn't just a place for discussion. It's our lifeline, our confirmation that this truth is breaking through the barriers of censorship and suppression. What do you think these signs mean? Have you witnessed any unusual phenomena in your area? Do these patterns align with your understanding of prophetic texts? Your perspective matters not just to me, but to everyone seeking clarity in these unprecedented times. If you're new to Light Found, subscribe now. We're documenting these events in real time, often hours before mainstream sources acknowledge them, if they acknowledge them at all. Click the subscribe button and activate notifications so you'll know immediately when new evidence emerges. For those who've been with us on this journey, your continued support makes this work possible. The Light Found community isn't just viewers. You're co-investigators, truth seekers, standing together at what may be the most significant moment in human history. The Super Thanks feature on this platform provides a direct way to support our ongoing investigations. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps maintain the secure servers that store our evidence, fund the specialized equipment needed to document these phenomena, and support the brave whistleblowers risking everything to share what they've witnessed. Your Super Thanks contributions are what allow us to bring you daily updates as these events accelerate. Without this support, we simply couldn't maintain the infrastructure needed to bypass the increasingly aggressive suppression efforts targeting this information. This isn't about monetizing fear. It's about sustaining crucial work at a pivotal moment. It's about ensuring that whatever happens in the coming days and weeks, humanity has access to unfiltered truth, free from political agendas and institutional constraints. Leave a comment below. Share your location and any unusual phenomena you've witnessed. Your reports help us track the pattern as it expands globally. Your testimony may provide crucial pieces to this unfolding puzzle. Review our previous investigations on the channel. The patterns become clearer when viewed in sequence. Connections emerge that might not be apparent in isolation. The evidence builds upon itself, revealing a coherence that transcends coincidence. Whatever you believe about these manifestations, whether you see them as divine harbingers, extraterrestrial contact, or phenomena yet to be explained by science, one thing is undeniable. We stand at a threshold moment in human history. Something profound is unfolding, something that appears to be following a precisely calculated timetable established millennia ago. The veil between worlds is thinning. The signs prophesied by our ancestors are manifesting with undeniable clarity. The armies of heaven appear to be assembling. Are you ready for what comes next? Stay vigilant, stay connected, and remember, in times of greatest darkness, the light of truth becomes most precious. This is Light Found, standing witness as history unfolds. We'll continue bringing you the evidence they don't want you to see, no matter the cost. Because some truths are too important to remain hidden,